All right, welcome back. So we're going to spend one more lesson on function methods, and then we're going to learn about procedure methods. So those are just methods that don't return a value. They just perform a specific task. But we're going to spend one more day on function methods. So last class we wrote a simple method called min that takes in two integers as input, and it gives us back the smaller of a and b. So pretty simple. So this program here, I'm asking the user to enter a and b, and then I'm just passing that data down to the min method, which is down here. If I scroll down, I can see the min method is here. So this is taking in two int parameters, which means input. This is the input into the method. And so then I'm doing a little calculation here, and I'm returning either x or y, and then I'm returning the smaller back to where I called it, so back to up here. Okay. So this whole highlighted region will be replaced with either a or b, whatever one is smaller. Okay, so it's important to note that when you pass parameters a and b, so let's say a is storing the number 7 and b is storing the number 5, then a copy of these are made into x and y. So x will be 7 and y will be 5. So in this code here, you can't use a and b. You can't refer to a and b. You'll get an error. You have to refer to x and y, which basically are just copies of a and b. All right. Likewise, back up in the main method, I can't access x and y. They don't exist up here. X and y only exist temporarily down in this method. All right. So up to this point in the course, we've really written all of our code inside the main method. And so what we're starting to do now is break up the main method into pieces. And we're going to start to have several methods, not just one method, but we're going to start to have more than one method in our programs. Okay, what's the purpose? What's the benefit to doing this? Well, it's nice to have your code in manageable pieces. It's kind of easier to focus on and to fix that code. But also you could reuse this code. So you just type it once. You just kind of package up this little function method, and then you can use it as many times as you want. So you can see I'm using it 3 times, but I'm passing in different values each time I use it. So it's great for code reuse. All right. One thing I wanted to show you that I didn't show you in the last video is often we can have a graphical representation of a method, and a lot of times I have this kind of 3D box. And so a function is kind of like a factory with inputs, okay, and you can have as many inputs as you want. You can have 1 input, you could have 2, you could have 10 inputs, and then there's usually an output, so something coming out. Okay, so this factory basically takes in data, and then it does something, and it spits out an answer, spits out an output. So we have just made a function called min. That's what we made in the last video, and this takes in an int x and an int y. So these are the input parameters, the numbers that are coming in. And then we basically do some stuff. We find out which one is smaller, and then we return the smaller of x and y. Okay, so that's what's coming out of this method. So sometimes it's nice to think of these things as a graphical representation. Okay. We're going to kick it up a little bit of a notch today. So we're going to create a new class called Function Methods 2. And I kind of have it set up here. So I have the class header and the main method header. So the main method starts here and ends here. And then right away we're going to create another method. So automatically you just write public static. And now let's read what we want to make here. So it says write a method called sum, so that's the name of the method, that accepts an int parameter n and returns the sum of all the ints from 1 to n inclusive. So for example, if I were to say sum 4, so if that's the input parameter, then I want this function to return the sum of all the numbers from 1 to 4. So in that case, it's going to be 10. Okay, so The third thing that comes after static is it's called the return type. So what type of data is being returned? What are we returning? Well, it looks like we're returning an int, which will always be the case. If you're adding up the numbers from 1 to an integer, then the answer is going to be an integer. Okay, the next thing comes the name of the method. So the name of this method is called sum. And then finally, we need to put a list of our input parameters. Now, in this case, we only have one input. There's just one integer coming in. So we have to declare it as a variable. So I'm going to say that it's an int, and I'm going to call it n. You can call this whatever you want, but in the description, they're calling it n. So I'm going to be consistent and use the same name. Okay, so we're going to have an open brace and a closed brace, and now we're going to put code inside. So what are we doing here? Well, we want to write code that will add up all the numbers from 1 to n. Okay, it's not always going to be 4. It could be 1,000. We don't know how big or small this number is going to be. So to do this, we are going to make a total variable. Okay, set it equal to 0. And then we simply are just going to make a loop where I'm going to make a brand new variable called I. This is my loop variable. And I'm going to start it at 1. And I want I to go all the way up to n. And I want I to go up by 1. And then in the loop, all we have to do is say total plus equals I. So this line will run over and over and over again. I will be 1, and then 2, and then 3, and then 4. And each time we're going to be adding it to our total. So we're keeping a running total. And then I'm just going to return total. And that's it. Notice I'm not printing anything at all. So these little functions that we're creating, you shouldn't be printing anything in them. You're just returning one answer. Okay. So now how do I test it? How do I run this method and make sure it works? Well, we're going to go up to the main method, and you need to call the method. So the name of the method is sum, and then you have to have parentheses, and then you have to put a parameter in. Now, this method takes in one integer, so I'm going to put in 4. Okay, just for testing purposes, I'm going to put in 4, and then let's see if we get 10. Now, unfortunately, I can't just leave it like this, because I need to do something with this return value. Remember that this method, it's going to give me something in return. So I need to do something with it. So you can either store it to, a brand new variable. So I'm going to store the result into W, and then you can print it. Okay, you can do that. Or you could just do it in one line of code, and you could simply just print this. So you are allowed to do this. You can call a method inside a print line statement, and it will call the method first, and then it will print that answer. So let's see what happens. I'm going to compile, and hopefully we get the number 10, and then we'll know it's working. Okay, excellent, 10. Let's try another example. So I'm going to say system.out.println sum3. Okay, so now I'm calling this method again down here, and it's going to run this loop all over again, but this time n is going to be 3. So I really should get 1 plus 2 plus 3, which is 6. Okay, so let's run that and see if I get 6. All good, yeah. And then, if you want, you can, function methods too. You can try it one more time and put a big number in there. So what if I put 1,000? Okay, so this is, once again, it's going to call the sum function. So 1,000 will get passed into n, and then I'm going to run this loop 1,000 times, adding up all the numbers. So we should get a pretty big number here. So if I compile and run it, okay, so we get 500,500. So that's the sum of all the numbers from 1 to 1,000. All right, so that's the benefit to making a function, is that we can reuse it. We can call the function many, many times really quickly just by saying one command. And you only had to write this code once. Okay? All right, we're going to do one more example, and then I'll have you do some practice. So I've set up another comment down here. And this says, write a method called count that accepts a string str and a char c. This method will return the number of times c occurs in str. So it's counting the number of times this character occurs in this string. So here's an example. If I say count typewriter E, this should return 2 because that's the number of times that character occurs inside that string. All right, so public static, always put that. Now, the third thing is the return type. So what is this method going to return? What is the output? Well, it's always returning a number. So we're going to return an int. Then comes the name of the method. Okay, so we want to call this method count. And then comes the input parameters. So we need 2 of them this time. We need a string and a char. So we're going to say string str and char c. All right, I'm being consistent with the description. So I'm just reusing the same variables that they're suggesting in the question. Okay, so now we need to count the number of times this character occurs in this string. So what we can do is, once again, make a total variable, right? And I'm going to make a for loop, and I'm going to make I. This time I is going to represent each index of our string. So that will be index 0, index 1, index 2, all the way up to the end. So I is going to be 0, and it's going to go up to str.length. Now, don't make it equal to, because then you're going to go out of bounds. We're just going to go up to the length of the string. And then we're going to say make I go up by 1 each time. Then we're going to have an if statement saying if str.char at I, so if the character at index I, which starts at 0, if that character right there, if that is equal to this, okay, it's not always E, it could be any character, we don't know. So I'm going to call it this variable C. So again, this is a variable that is storing a character, so it could be storing any character. So if there's a match, if this variable is equal to this character, then I'm going to simply add 1 to my total plus plus. And that's it. You don't need an else. You just let the loop run its course. And then when I'm finished, I'm going to return total. So I'm going to return the answer back to where this method is called. Okay. So I am going to go up to my main method, and I'll just do it under here. So now I'm going to say system.out.println count. Let's try this one, typewriter E. Okay, so that's the name of the method, and then I have to put in a string and a char. I have to put it in that order because that's how we defined the parameter list. Okay, so let's see if this prints 2, because there are 2 E's there. Okay, so just, I have a problem. Oh yes, I forgot the parentheses here. Okay, so let's compile. Good. And just look at the last number, and yep, we got a 2. Good. Okay, let's try one more. So if I go back up here, and I'm going to print line count, hello, how are you today? And then I can put in any character I want. I'm going to put a space this time. So you can even do space characters. So this method is going to be called again, and this is the string that I'm passing down to str, and this is the character that I'm passing down to C. And so it's going to run this code all over again, and it's going to count the number of spaces this time in the sentence. So the answer should be 1, 2, 3, 4. So let's run it and have a look. And it seems to be working. Okay, just for good measure, what if I put, instead of a space, what if I put an X in there? So now we know that it doesn't occur at all. So it should give me 0 as that last number being printed. Let's have a look. Yep, all good. Okay, so these are two kind of more complex methods that involve loops. And so we're going to have you practice a little bit with that. And then in the next video, we're going to talk about different kinds of methods called procedure methods. But let's keep practicing with function methods right now. Okay, thanks for watching.